Hi, I'm Jess Grace. This is my channel, The Mole Lotus. Our channel really. And I am the Mole Lotus, but I named it the Mole Lotus for those who identify, like I do, as having to have started a little further down than just the muddy waters in order to become the beautiful lotus flower. So today we are continuing on with the integration of the feminine aspects from the shadow. So if you've seen the other ones, great. This is a really big one and it's taken me a while to put together because of that. And if you're joining for the first time, I'm going to reiterate what it is that I'm waffling on about. Okay, so firstly, shadow work. I know, guys, but hear it from my point of view because I feel like the way I understand it for me has been quite profound and really easy to use in a practical manner that has helped me to sort of understand how I am living and reacting in the world, this 3D world that we exist in, the collective agreement, which we challenge every day. Come on now. So shadow work. What it is for me is when we are born, we're our authentic selves, and then we come into life and we're taught to mask because there's parts of ourselves that are deemed inappropriate. And so we fragment ourselves and things are allowed to exist and some things have to be relegated into the shadow and hidden away. However, when we do that, those parts of us that are inherently ours want to be loved and noticed, and they want their voice to be heard because every single part of us is valid and has a really beautiful wisdom to teach us and to protect us. And so we work as a whole. We can't just cut off parts of ourselves. So then when those parts of ourselves that we've cut away are sitting in the shadow, what they do is they try to get our attention like a petulant child because it wants to be loved and heard. And so it'll act out in ways where we've lost control, has a beautiful wisdom in whatever challenge or contrast or any sort of conflict that we're having, or it will try to have its voice heard, and so it'll come out like if you've ever had a fit of anger and then regretted it later, or you might go all out and have a lovely bingy night with your girlfriends and stay up till 5 a.m. Or we start acting in this victim role because we haven't learned how to have a voice and ask for our needs to be met. And so it will come out in really inappropriate ways. And when we reintegrate those parts of ourselves that we've deemed inappropriate, we are more in control of ourselves. We have more access to wisdom and the power within us to do things like set healthy boundaries or ask for our needs to be met or go after a goal that we've really wanted to go for, but have sort of decided that, we're not good enough. And there's a part of us that will go, yeah, we are good enough. Let's do it. Let's go for that thing. And so for me, reintegrating those parts that we've deemed inappropriate is super, super powerful. The quickest way I do it is to identify it and to also identify its polar opposite. Let's say this week I was working on visibility and invisibility. And so I bring those both in and I try to find and understand the purpose of either end of that pole. Sometimes it is fantastic to be visible and sometimes it is fantastic to be invisible. And so by bringing them in and saying, I see your purpose, I love you, and I thank you for everything that you do for us, and I bring you back from the shadow now and I give you an equal voice at my round table. Because, nothing is more important than something else. We're all so completely valid. So this is what I mean by shadow work. This is what I mean by reintegration. Now, I'm waffling on about the reintegration of the feminine aspects of all things, because under this patriarchal society that we're all living in, the feminine aspect of all human beings, regardless of gender or genderlessness, has been relegated into the shadow as a collective consciousness because it's been deemed inappropriate by the patriarchy, not by men. Men and women are equally the victims of patriarchy. It's just women might have it a little bit shitter. But that doesn't mean that we're not all victims. And I think that I have come up with a really awesome way of understanding the feminine and male aspects of all human beings without having to sort of put it in a gender language. So I've said before something like, a woman or the feminine energy is collective. They collect, they're collectors, and men are hunters. And yes, traditionally those were the gendered roles, right? But that doesn't mean that women aren't capable of being huntery and men aren't capable of being collecty. I think we are an equal balance of all of those things as a human being. And as in the eyes of whatever it is that has created us and governs us. I don't think it governs us. I think it watches us because it's bored. But, go back and check that episode out. So the way I have decided to explain it is like our heart. So a heart is our pretty essential organ, right? And it's, if you look at chakra systems, the center of our chakra system is the heart. The way I like to sort of explain it is the heart in its entirety of its life is either radiating or magnetizing. And so the scientific terms for that are diastole and systole. Okay, so what happens with the heart? It doesn't pump and fill itself with blood at the same time. It's doing one or the other. And it's always doing it in equal measures and in a steady rhythm. So very shamanic. And that's, that's sort of part of it. I digress. So what the heart does is it will fill itself up, which is the relax phase, what I like to refer to as magnetism, because it's bringing something into it. And in order to do that, it needs to relax. And that's the diastole phase. And then the systole is where it's pumping it out again in equal measures to what it's brought into itself. And that's the force, right? Where it's an active thing, right? And it's the systole stage. So you cannot have life without either of those two stages, without the relax and the force, the magnetism and the radiance. So it's radiating the blood back into the body, and it's drawing into it as well from the body. So for me, those two could be related to gender in the concept, not in the you have a vagina or a pee-pee, or don't want either or have lost them somehow. So when I mean the feminine energy is quite magnetic, is that we relax and we allow our cup to be full. The masculine energy is the force, the hunt, the push, the manipulation of existence, and you need both of those things in equal measures. They're both fucking valid, and we, as whatever we identify gender-wise, we have those aspects to it. And so maybe instead of saying, that's masculine, that's feminine, that's a gender thing, blah, 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 we could just say relax and force, radiate, magnetize, or diastole, systole. Diastole, lady, systole, man. Traditionally, the feminine role, because we're humans and we're always evolving and becoming better, so traditionally the women would have been gatherers, whether or not they wanted to be, and the men would have been hunters. And I believe I've put that movie, made a reference to it before, Prey, which is part of the Predator franchise. But it was actually really fantastic because she really, really wanted to be a hunter. And she was given the opportunity because she needed to fight the predator and become the ultimate hunter. But because she had been forced to do all these feminine things and learn all these feminine sort of roles within her community, but also used her spare time to passionately go after being a hunter, I think that ultimately she had the advantage because she had equal measure the feminine and masculine aspects of that tribe. Her advantage was that she knew herbal medicine. She knew how to read signs from the feminine perspective. She knew how to heal. But she also knew how to hunt and track and, be at one with nature in order to blend in and camouflage. And that's where her advantage came from, was that she was well balanced within those two things. That's just how I read it. I'm weird like that. Anyway, let's move on. Okay. We can't talk about a female sexuality without talking about the Immaculate Conception, okay? And I will like to call this section Motherfuckers, okay? Because this is quite profound to me anyway. So, Mary wasn't a virgin when Jesus was conceived. What that was referring to, and I watched a lecture from some reverend, and I'm not adding it because I don't like that, but the way he explained it was that Mary was indeed a virgin of sin, not sex, okay? And he explained it that because God had chosen her to bear his son in the future, that she was therefore vaccinated against being succumbed to any kind of sin in her life. And so by the time Jesus came along, she was pure of sin. And that is the Immaculate Conception. Now, I really believe that humans over time have sort of subconsciously programmed men and women to believe then and therefore, because I don't know about you, but I always thought it was because she'd never done it, but I feel like what's really sort of being taught to us is that a woman that is worth marrying doesn't enjoy sex. She is not in touch with her sexuality. That is a sinful act. And I mean, it is, there's Quakers. They're not even allowed to thrust themselves into each other. So they're shaking around trying to do things that are sexual of nature. And that's stupid. Oh my God. Anyway, and also in the same sort of era and teachings and religious beliefs, that prostitutes were bad and prostitutes were sinful. Right? That's like the worst. The most horrific thing you could be is a prostitute. And yet, it is the vilification of a woman who knows her worth when it comes to sexuality and isn't afraid to negotiate her worth on her terms in order to exist within this world. So a couple of weeks ago I talked about how a woman's vulnerability is different to a man's. And the way I explained it was that, a man is vulnerable if he shows emotion, and a woman is vulnerable because of her financial setting and her physical setting. And that doesn't just mean gender pay gaps and, like literal force. It means that women are expected to do all this unpaid labor. And so, like our bodies, if we want money, we not only have to do all the unpaid labor, but we also have to work a job. And we have the gender pay gap. So our bodies run out a lot faster. So anything that we want to do with ourselves outside of earning money and doing unpaid work, we don't get to do. We don't have energy for that anymore. And so our physical strength is vulnerable as a woman because of that unpaid labor. A woman's sexuality is been relegated into the shadow. okay? Because it's sinful for women to know their worth, okay? Because if they knew their worth, then we would ask to be paid for our unpaid labour. And that doesn't suit the patriarchy. So the concepts of things like prostitution, terrible. We don't want that. We want that to be the worst thing you could possibly think of. But the way I see it is that men marry their mothers and they fuck whores, right? So when a man marries a woman who he's deemed an appropriate wife to raise his children and do all his unpaid labor, right? And support him to do whatever it is the fuck he wants to do, he chooses a woman that isn't in touch with her worth, isn't in touch with her sexuality, whether it's not from a scheming, calculating perspective, it's just this subconscious program that we've all been raised with. And so a woman who's in touch with her sexuality has traditionally been absolutely vilified by society. You know, what a gross, disgusting woman to have enjoyment in that department. Put your bits away. And so when I say men are raised to fuck their mothers, it's because they want somebody to take over the role that his mother used to play, and that's cook for him, wash his clothes, do all that domestic labor. And then when he comes to have sex with her, he doesn't see her as a human being with a personality and those aspects that you would be turned on by in a partner. Just go, oh, I love how she's sassy, or I like this, or I like that. I love how she sort of smiles and stuff. He spent all day, all week, all month, all fucking year treating her like his maid, his mother. This thing that has to nurture him and clean up after him all the time. And she has had to baby this full-grown man, right? So when it comes to sex within a marriage, a lot of people don't enjoy that dynamic. A lot of people don't want to fuck their mum. And a lot of people don't want to fuck their sons. You know, another way of putting it, a man doesn't want to have sex with a woman who resents him. And a woman doesn't want to have sex with a man that she resents. It's gross. It's just gross. And so what happens is there's a quick in and out, and it's just not very exciting. It's not very passionate. And there's a lot of power in sex. It's this exchange of energy, and it's a build of energy, and it's this beautiful, wonderful thing that it can occur between two people, and even between you and you. There's this thing called sex magic. I haven't looked too much into it. It seems pretty woo-woo, but it's probably not, and I haven't had time to research it, and I think I've got enough to say today. I think that enjoyment of sex, that pastime, if you will, is a beautiful, wonderful expression of how we are appreciative to be here in this place where it's a part of our human right to live within like a balance of joy as well as discourse. That these are one of the pleasures that we have while we're here in this three-dimensional space. So to deny both genders or any genderlessness person in those traditional dynamics is not what we're here for, and we need to start rejecting that, and also rejecting that horrible dynamic of men marrying their mothers and then literally using women to masturbate with. Anyway, next I want to talk about the true Immaculate Conception, right? Madonna. Now, this creator, whose name I didn't write down before I started filming, and I will put it here. I'm going to play a clip. I've got a few clips to share with you today from very fucking wonderful content creators. But this woman will say it better than me because I am not a scholar. I am a spiritual medium, and I'm not. I'm going to let the experts speak on the matter.
Sat across In 1992, a reporter sat across from the biggest pop star on the planet and admitted on camera that her autonomy frightened him.
Are you frightened of a woman that can turn herself on? Are you frightened of a woman who is not afraid to look at her genitals in the mirror? Does that frighten you?
A little bit, yes. Yes, that's right.
Why?
Oh, I don't know why.
At the time, Madonna was the only female artist to have 3 consecutive #1 albums. And then she released Erotica, a concept album about liberation and looking for romance. And it was released with a book and a film. All 3 dropped in quick succession at the height of the AIDS epidemic, when queer romance was loaded with fear and shame. In the book, she wrote about her own fantasies and then shot herself in them and included intimate images of same-sex couples. Back then, the only understanding of women who did pornography was that they did so because they had no other options. So when the richest, most famous pop star on the planet did it voluntarily, people were like, that's it. She's straight up mentally ill.
Shame, shame, shame! The difference between Madonna and her book is that her book wears a cover and she doesn't.
Madonna, get saved, and there's better things for you than having sex with a dog and seducing children.
These were not the first nude photos ever published of Madonna, though. When she was 19 and still an anonymous dancer, she answered a newspaper ad for a nude modelling gig that paid her $25. And then she became famous, and Playboy published those images, and Madonna had no say over it. She also saw none of the money that Christie's generated when they then auctioned them off later for $37,500. And yet somehow, the photos that Madonna chose to publish of herself were grossly offensive.
I'd never seen the likes of it.
You have so. You've never read Playboy magazine or Penthouse or anything like that?
Yes, but it was different with you.
Why?
There was the picture of you astride the mirror, masturbating. I thought that was horrible.
Madonna's Erotica album set a new career low for her. The album's Bad Girl was the first single of hers not to reach the top 20 in 10 years.
One headline compared me to Satan. I said, wait a minute, isn't Prince running around with fishnets and high heels and lipstick with his butt hanging out? Yes, he was. This was the first time I truly understood that women really did not have the same freedom as men.
As the many years went on and pop stars continued to reference Erotica, the influence of the project was undeniable. It was added to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Few women artists before or since Erotica have been so outspoken about their fantasies and desires. Erotica remains one of the boldest expressions of female sexuality. In 2022, Madonna posted to Instagram, "Now Cardi B can sing about her WAP. Miley Cyrus can come in like a wrecking ball. You're welcome." History has a way of being kinder to the brave than the moment does. Madonna knew that. She just had to wait it out. I'm Amber, and this is the Ladyfill series. Songs that expanded what was acceptable to sing about.
Edit Mole here. So just I want you to take note, because I forgot to touch on this in this section, how she wasn't allowed to be in control of her sexual narrative, nor use it in any way, shape or form to create any kind of wealth for herself. But when she was given very little money or control over her sexual content, and then also completely ripped off of that content in the monetary sense, then it was okay. If a woman produces something in this world, it has to be for free, because we are not valued. Our contribution has no value and no worth. And I think... So, pretty cool, right? A woman, and fair play to Madge, right? It was a phenomenal thing. And even my mother, who was a feminist and educated at the time, was like, well, she doesn't need to do all this sex stuff in order to, be successful, because she just doesn't have to, promote her sexuality in order to get ahead. And I don't think a lot of us understood what was happening at the time. And as that content creator said, she was groundbreaking. She was exploring her power and her sexuality because she was in a position of power in order to do that. She was already rich. She was already powerful. She already had, the control of the record labels and that. Because she was such a big star, she could be in control of her creative projects, and she used that well. Whatever you think of her as a personality, I don't care. She's fucking brilliant, and she totally changed the landscape for wet ass pussies to be sung about and revered. Because a pussy needs to be wet in order for it to be fucking joyful. wonderful, right? So I think that this is a perfect, wonderful example of how a woman's sexuality was absolutely found incredibly gross and disgusting and was vilified. And also a beautiful example of how a woman in touch with her sexuality can be really powerful, because this woman, Madonna, has changed the landscape of many women to come in many different ways, not just with sexuality, as well as the queer community. You know, it was the first time that like I remember being exposed to that women were allowed to have sex with other women. And I mean, I identify as queer for sure, but I wouldn't say I was a lesbian in that way. But I certainly, as a young blossoming teenager, thought that was a pretty hot idea. I was just like, what? And I had lesbian Barbies because I didn't have enough Kens, but I still thought it was like perfectly acceptable and fine and a little bit sexy, you know. I think also what's really important here is that Madonna has a wonderful sense of self-worth. Now, she gets called narcissistic all the time, and quite possibly, I think, to be in a normal relationship with her might be a little bit difficult. But the fact that she had so much self-worth, that she was vilified for that. And I think that sort of comes into my next sort of segment in regards to my personal experience of my own sexuality. I'm going to talk about here. But there's a cool clip as well that marries in with that. So I'm going to let this woman talk first, because it's actually a very interesting story, and it's very similar to my own.
When I was a young woman, I had a curvaceous figure with large, perky breasts. I hated them because I grew up in an era where breasts attracted sleazy stares and were often the butt of jokes. Get a look at those knockers, I'd hear some guy shout at the bar while his mates smirked into their beers. I began hunching my shoulders, wearing baggy clothes, but it didn't reduce my growing self-hatred. And to make matters worse, Twiggy was the fashion icon at the time, a skinny, childlike waif. I got so uncomfortable in my own skin, I had breast reduction surgery. Thinking back to that young girl today, it breaks my heart, because there was nothing wrong with her body. Shame was what drove me to have surgery. And what's ironic, as soon as I gained weight, my breasts grew. The body really does keep score. I was meant to be a big-breasted woman. Here's the point. The shame that drove me to hate my body should never have been mine in the first place. It belonged to a culture that objectified women, teaching us that our value depended on how we met an impossible beauty standard. Sound familiar? It should, because it's still happening, even more so given the scope and power of social media. I've had enough, and what's thrilling, more and more women have too. They're living lives unapologetically, refusing to be intimidated, and they're fighting back, returning the shame to where it belongs, to the name caller, the bully, the controller, those so insecure they have to humiliate and diminish others. Call me an eternal optimist, but I believe there's never been a better time to be a woman. At 77, I stand taller than I ever have, take up more space, carry my body with pride, and I'm committed right until my last breath to inspire and support other women to dismiss the shame that doesn't belong to them.
So you can see that through no fault of her own, that this woman had something that men deemed to be overtly sexual. You know, like, imagine being born with an extra finger, and because you've got an extra finger through no fault of your own, it was just some weird genetic lottery, that extra finger was deemed that you were a dirty fucking slut, and therefore treated as one, no matter what your actions and values and morals are, that is how you are going to be perceived by 50% of the population, and quite often by a lot of women. And I just want to show you a picture of me. And I was 12 here, right? Beautiful. Me and my girlfriend, and it was our year 6 leaving dance. And a friend of mine's mother was picking her daughter up after the dance, and I was flirting with some boys because that's what you do. I don't know, maybe you don't. Who cares? But that woman called me a slut, and then that my friend told all the kids in my class that that's what her mother had said about me, and then it obviously got back to me, and I had a hard time growing up because I started growing breasts at 9 and menstruating at 11, and I look like this. Okay, when I'm not hiding my beauty, I think that I had lots of men say, "Oh, you look like Sophia Loren," and she's quite a knockout. Look at this fucking body, right? But that is how I was perceived by men and women, as somebody who was overtly sexual because of the way my body shape formed, right? I was treated as such. And the times when I wasn't treated as such is when I would hide myself under a lot of weight, or, being a punk and shaving my head and rejecting, society's beauty standards, covered in children and muck and all these sorts of things. But whenever I allowed myself to feel beautiful and be seen and visible, I was treated like a sex object. So I didn't get to choose that. And I also had a low self-esteem. So, for me to be authentically myself meant that I was going to be vilified for being overtly sexual when I wasn't. As a result, dating was hard because people saw me as somebody to have sex with and not to marry or be in a relationship with. And so for me to want to then pursue any kind of relationship or any kind of romantic love, I had to value add. I'd just be like, I am sexy, but I also will cook and clean and do all your washing, and I'll pay all the bills because I'm not a gold digger. I'm not beautiful because I'm a gold digger, and blah 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 blah, running around, and as a result, never doing anything that I wanted to do for me, never meeting my own needs, never feeling my own self-worth. And so you can see that this objectification of a woman's body stops her from discovering herself and her passion and her desire. And so it's just another form of jail. It's just another form of keeping women small and safe. Now, another thing in regards to that is our own mothers will do that to us. And look, I'm not picking on my mum. Okay, I'm picking on society. It's inherited from that witch wound, and that witch wound is that we've all learned how to keep our daughters safe because we don't want them to be too big. Because if they become these beautiful tall poppies, they get burnt at stakes. And even though we're not burning women on the cross in a lot of countries, probably still in some, definitely stoning them to death and that sort of thing, but we have inherited this way of keeping our women safe, other women keeping their women safe, by remaining small and not asking for our needs to be met. Don't be overtly sexual. Don't be a target. And so one of those ways is to not be in touch with your sexuality. Don't ask for your needs to be met because you're going to be deemed a prostitute, or you're going to be deemed too powerful, or too, difficult, or too angry, or too blah blah blah. And so we're kept small, and that's because we've been removed and kept away from our own power as women, and as a collective, our feminine aspects and the power that sits within those. This next one, this next segment, I think is quite cool. And they go hand in hand. I've got 2 clips for you here. Now, I've spoken before about how menopause is literally this phase of life where a woman will go into, her brain will literally do that cocoon thing. It'll turn itself into literal goo, restructure itself, because it's designed at a certain age to quit with the gathering of berries, then the bearing of children and the nurturing, to the teaching of wisdom and handing down of information, right? Now, before I progress with this bit of information, I want you to have a think about what you find attractive. Because like in regards to plastic surgery, right? I've always said this, and if you know me, though, you've probably heard me say this, that plastic surgery is for the confidence of the person who has the plastic surgery. It has nothing to do with the person viewing the person with plastic surgery. So the beauty is for the holder and not the beholder. So when you meet somebody at a party, let's say, and you go, oh, they're pretty good looking, I'm going to go and chat to them. There's that initial attraction, and you get to know them, and suddenly they're just the most unattractive person in the world because they've got this awful personality, and they're really rude, and they're not your cup of tea personality-wise, and suddenly they become, ugh. But say you meet somebody, and at first you're not that attracted to them, but you get to know them over time, and suddenly they're the most fucking stunning, right? You just, you want them so hard because you've discovered that they're a really beautiful person and they become beautiful in your eyes. Now, if you look at the beauty standards for women, that are constantly changing, so women can never get too comfortable in anything. You get the plastic surgery and then suddenly you don't have BBLs anymore. They're gross. Ugh. And so that's just another way of controlling women. I mean, look at the Ozempic thing going on. It's so obvious now that a woman who is strong and in control of her body and all that sort of stuff is too hard to control. So we want them to be nice and skinny, and we want them to be financially vulnerable, so that, you know, they have to rely on men to bring the bacon home, and also they don't have enough energy to fucking do much because they're so hungry. You know, Ozempic it's the way it works is it makes you feel sick so you can't eat. How is that a solution to anything? And all these women that are having it, they don't need it. And so they're giving themselves like literally osteoporosis, not able to move, not able to walk around. I saw a clip of this woman on that Selling Sunset show, and she was walking, and she'd obviously like had an eating disorder. I'll see if I can find it. She was walking, but she could barely walk. She was struggling to carry those shoes around, and you know, it was so sad. But she looked good on camera, you know, but that's only because we're programmed to perceive somebody that skinny to be beautiful. If we constantly saw all the different shapes and sizes and these fashions that suited them and the colors that suited them and the hairstyles that suited them and allowed them to be their authentic selves so we could see their fucking amazing, beautiful inner light, then we would all find ourselves beautiful. And that wouldn't be very good for capitalism or the patriarchy. So what I'm trying to get to is that a woman's sexuality and her worth in that sort of sense, like her contribution to society, we deem non-existent after a certain age. We're just like, well, she's not beautiful anymore. She's not 12. She don't look 12. She can't pass for 12, so she's invalid. Put her away. Yuck. We'll get a 20-year-old to play a 50-year-old, married to a 70-year-old. You know, whatever. Anyway, I digress. So that's absolutely not the case. A woman continues to be beautiful till the day she dies. She continues to be sexual until the day she dies. Her sexuality doesn't change. It transcends, and it becomes wiser and more powerful with age. So I'll leave you with this clip here.
So in the Kama Sutra, the word for clitoris is Madan Chatri, which means the umbrella of the love god. Now, aside from the fact that clearly 2000 years ago, they understood that the structure of clitoris was like an umbrella, not like a little nub, which is something that they only discovered here in the West not so long ago. But more than that, it's the language that they were using. You know, in a world where every part of the woman's body is an abusive term, where every act of intimacy is about violating her, this text was describing the female body, female pleasure, in the most exquisite terms. So the clitoris was the Mother Chhatri, the vagina was Mother Dola, or the swing of the love god. And even love bites were not just hickeys. There was an entire erotic vocabulary around love bites, where you were taught everything from when to give them, because the Kama Sutra says that only donkeys start foreplay with love bites. The accomplished lover knows that you have to be at the right level of arousal for it to be pleasurable. So it taught you how to understand when she was at the right level of arousal. It taught you what kind of bite to give, harder, softer, etc., depending on what her passion needed at that point. Because a woman's pleasure was considered precious, because it was believed that that's what kept the earth in balance. There were even festivals where women would transfer their erotic pleasure to the earth in order to restore the earth. And this is why I fight for this text, because as Naomi Wolf says, imagine young girls growing up hearing their bodies described in such exquisite terms, being told that the balance of the universe depends on their pleasure. Imagine how differently girls would feel about themselves. Imagine the sort of self-love, self-esteem that we women would learn to have for ourselves. Because the words we use define how we act. And for everyone who's going to be like, oh, but this is so much work, please do feel free to scroll on, because honestly, you're not the lovers that any of us are seeking. So
I think that for me, that menopause and that teaching of how to make love to a woman and the wisdom in that story that she was telling, like where they had characters, and that this process was really important to both sexes, and that it brought balance to the world, to the community, because it's a beautiful lesson in teaching that a woman's sexuality is a long game, and it's like learning how to play an instrument or any kind of skill that takes time to master and be able to deliver beautifully. And it teaches all of us this patience and this dedication in order to come to this beautiful crescendo that is the woman's pleasure, her climax. And if a man can learn, or a woman, or just any human being, a woman about her own body can learn that patience and dedication in order to wield and yield energy and make it become this beautiful thing, then that wisdom that you gain from that process will be able to be applied to the rest of everybody's lives. There's wisdom in conquering something and mastering a skill, and one that's so beautiful that has to be a balance between the two people involved in that process of wonderful communication and experimentation and exploration. That there's this way of having learning how to have a wonderful relationship between two people, and a relationship with your own body, and to be able to talk about what your needs are and ask for those needs to be met by saying a little to the left and a softer and now faster. My personal sexual experience is I just sit there like a starfish, because I don't want to come across as a sexual being, because I've been vilified for it my whole life from the age of freaking 9. And so I traditionally have been denied the access of how to say to somebody that I am in a sexual relationship with, this is how I would like you to do it. Now do it this way. And then the person who is making love to me is making love to a starfish. I can't imagine that would be very fun either. And if they are enjoying that, then I don't think they're very nice people. You know what I'm saying? I'm just saying that that process is in itself a lesson in wisdom. And I believe that the menopausal woman is going to be so fantastic at providing, not just in regards to sexuality, into every aspect of every realm of this world, but in regards to sexuality, that in the teaching phase of her life is going to have so much wisdom, because they have had that relationship with their own sexuality in order to do things like teach people how to ask for their needs to be met, teach people how to explore their own bodies in order to find things that have pleasure for them, to be able to communicate effectively with somebody that you are intimate with, to find the power in wielding and yielding your own energy sources. And so I really think that no, society, women of all ages are fucking beautiful, and they're very fucking sexy, and they're very wise, and they're very intelligent. And I am not going to be accepting this narrative that because I'm 46 and turning menopausal or whatever in 5 minutes, that I'm, you know, invalid or invisible or visible, or, you know, just let's just take off that collective agreement that women are of a certain age aren't sexual, because look at this clip.
OnlyFans.
Okay.
How did that come about?
Someone said, you know, Hattie, you could be topless. You were topless on the Howard Stern show. Why don't you put yourself on this thing called OnlyFans? And then people will see it, and they'll pay to see you topless or naked. I said, oh, look, fine. I'll call my friends. They'll put me on, and we'll see what happens. I do lingerie, I do corsets, I do naked, I take showers. It impels me to be very sexually creative within the boundaries of my integrity.
What is it that you get out of this?
It's not sexual, because I don't get turned on when I'm posing. When I'm posing, I want to present. It's presentational. It's an act. And I enjoy that my body at my age can do all the stuff that it did when I was studying gymnastics. I mean, my legs can go here, I can go all the way back. You know, my breasts stand up, my nipples get hard, my gets to gleam. I mean, I'm like a nude phenomenon. And all my men, I mean, they're lovely to me. There's such a beautiful appreciation of the worship, the respect, the desire, the appreciation of an older woman, and in my case, a much older woman.
She likes her pussy glistening, and as it should be, you should never have sex with a dry vagina. And, you know, pearls of wisdom here. Never have sex with a dry vagina. And a wet, glistening vagina is a beautiful thing. It is like a fucking spring day of all this overt, powerful gorgeousness. And I love this woman, and I love it, because not only, like, she's like, I'm not aroused by it, but she finds that power in it, and she identifies with the men that have majesty for her power. They're just in awe of, like, wow, you're gorgeous. And that is the difference between catcalling and revering a woman in her glorious sexuality, and just admiring the power that she has, because she's unapologetic about displaying that gorgeousness about herself, because there's nothing shameful about being sexual and being in touch with your sexuality and admiring your own self-worth and your own beautifulful-ness. And I don't care what shape, size, age you are, you're fucking gorgeous. So to reiterate, I feel like regardless of your gender, we're both masculine and feminine, and I think we should start referring to those sorts of energies in a genderless way, as in radiance or magnetism, our diastole or systole, that we traditionally have been aborted from our power, because then we are able to be excellent slaves. We don't know our self-worth. We are vilified should we seek to discover it, and that the world is unbalanced because we have absolutely relegated a woman's sexuality into the shadow. And it is a beautiful, wonderful teaching tool for communications and relationships and self-worth and mastery and energy wielding and our own magic as human beings. That a woman's sexuality needs to become back into balance. We need to teach women. We need to teach men how important a woman's sexuality is, because we are out of balance and we are fucking out of time. And we have got very little time to get our shit on the road. Okay, if you like me, like and subscribe. If you don't, have a good life. I wish you very best. So stay tuned. I'm going to do that thing soon where I show you the content I like, even though I did it a little bit today, but you know, it'll be more random and less sexy. Peace out. Come on, girls. You believe in love? Because I got something to say about it. And I think it goes something like this.